Text 26, chapter 5. Kama krodha vimuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. Kama from desires, krodha and anger, vimuktanam of those who are liberated, yatinam of the saintly persons, yatachetasam who have full control over the mind, abhita assured in the near future, brahma nirvanam liberation in the supreme, vartate is there, viditatmanam of those who are self-realized. Translation: those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-reliant, self-disciplined, constantly endeavor for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. Purport: of the saintly persons who are constantly engaged in striving towards salvation, one who is in Krishna consciousness is the best of all. The Bhagavatam 4:22-39 confirms this fact as follows: Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya कर्माशयं ग्रथितम् उद्घटयन्ति सन्ता तद्वन्नरिक्तमतयो यतयोऽपि रूढा श्रोतो गणास्तदमरणं भज वासुदेवम्. Just try to worship in devotional service Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in the transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep-grown desire for fruitive activities in the conditioned soul. The desire to enjoy the fruitive activities of work is so deep-rooted that it is very difficult even for great sages to control such desires. Despite great endeavors, a devotee of the Lord, constantly engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, perfect in self-realization, very quickly attains liberation in the Supreme, owing to his complete knowledge in self-realization. He always remains in trance. To cite an analogous example of this, दर्शन ध्यान संस्पर्शेर मत्स्य कूर्मा विहांगमा स्वानि अपत्यानि पुष्णन्ति तथाहम अपि पद्मजा. By vision, by meditation, by touch only do the fish, tortoise and the birds maintain their offspring. Similarly do I also, O Padmaja. The fish brings up its offspring simply by looking at them. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. The eggs of the tortoise are laid on land and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, the devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly, by engagement in Krishna consciousness. He does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana, or the absence of material miseries, due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme. Text 27-28. Sparshan kritva bhahirbhayam chakshurshaivaantare bhruvo pranapano samo kritva nasabhyantaracharino yatindriya mano buddhir munir moksha parayana vigatecha bhayakrodo yas sada mukta eva sa. Sparshan sense objects such as sound, kritva keeping, bahi is external, bhaya unnecessary, chakshu eyes, cha also, eva certainly, antare between, bhruvo the eyebrows, prana apano up and down moving air, samo in the suspension, kritva keeping, nasa abhyantara within the nostrils, charino blowing, yata controlled, indriya senses, mana mind, buddhi intelligence, muni the transcendentalist, moksha for liberation, parayana being so distinct, Vigata having discarded icha wishes, bhaya fear, krodha anger, yaha one who sada always mukta liberated, eva certainly saha he is. Translation: shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breath within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind and senses and intelligence. The translator is aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Being engaged in Krishna consciousness, one can immediately understand one's spiritual identity, and then one can understand the Supreme Lord by means of devotional service. When one is well situated in devotional service, one comes to a transcendental position qualified to feel the presence of the Lord in the sphere of one's activity. This particular position is called liberation in the Supreme. After explaining the principles of liberation in the Supreme, After explaining the principles of liberation in the Supreme, the Lord gives instruction to Arjuna as to how one can come to that position by the practice of mysticism or yoga known as Ashtanga Yoga, which is divisible into an eightfold procedure called Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. In the sixth chapter, the subject of yoga is explicitly detailed, and at the end of fifth, it is only preliminarily explained. One has to drive out the sense objects such as sound, touch, form, taste, and smell by the pratyahara process in the yoga. Then keep the vision of the eyes between the two eyebrows, concentrate on the tip of the nose with half closed lids. There is no benefit in closing the eyes altogether because there is every chance of falling asleep. Nor is there a benefit in opening the eyes completely because then there is hazard of being attracted by sense objects. The breathing movement is restrained within the nostrils by neutralizing the up moving and down moving air within the body. By practice of such yoga, one is able to gain control over the senses, refrain from outward sense objects, and thus prepare oneself for liberation in the Supreme. This yoga process helps one become free from all kinds of fear and anger and thus feel the presence of the Super Soul in the transcendental situation. In other words, Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of executing yoga principles. This will be thoroughly explained in the next chapter. A Krishna conscious person, however, being always engaged in devotional service, does not risk losing his senses to some other engagement. This is a better way of controlling the senses than by Ashtanga Yoga. Text 29. भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकामहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति. Bhoktaram, the beneficiary, yajna of sacrifices, tapasam and penances and austerities, Sarvalok of all planets and the demigod thereof, Maha Ishwaram, the Supreme Lord, Suhridam, the benefactor, Sarva of all, Bhutanam, the living entities, Gyatva, thus knowing, Mam, me, Lord Krishna, Shantim, relief from material pangs, Richati, one achieves. Translation: a person in full Krishna consciousness of me, knowing me to the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifice and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and beneficiary of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Purport: the conditioned souls within the clutches of illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world, but they do not know the formula for peace which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord because He is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Shvetashvara Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord described as Tamishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be the Lord of all this survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is a master of the material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator of all the living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This fifth chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with complete knowledge of the Lord as a predominator. Such work is not different from the transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's eternal relationship with the Supreme Absolute, and the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna or the Supreme Personality of Godhead as pure soul. The eternal servant of God, as his fragmental part and parcel, he comes into contact with Maya illusion due to desire to lord it over Maya, and that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter, for it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. One who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Karma Yoga or action in Krishna consciousness.